In 1950, a 30-year-old woman inherited one of England's grandest estates and an 80% death duty bill that threatened to destroy it all. She wasn't born into nobility. She was the youngest of 6 sisters. The one they said, everybody cried when you were born, because you weren't a boy. The sister Nancy Mitford claimed never developed beyond the mental age of 9. But Deborah Mitford, Duchess of Devonshire, did something none of her famous sisters could do. She saved Chatsworth, and she did it wearing some of the most magnificent jewels in England, including a tiara so heavy, Queen Mary herself complained about the weight. Today, I want to show you 3 extraordinary pieces from the Devonshire collection. Let's step into the world of the housewife Duchess who transformed a crumbling palace into a commercial empire. Let's start with the tiara that was too heavy even for a queen. In 1893, Louise von Alten married the 8th Duke of Devonshire. She had already been married once before, to the 7th Duke of Manchester, which earned her the nickname the Double Duchess. Louise was 61 years old at her second wedding, but she was seen as a leader of fashion and society, and she intended to have jewels that reflected her status. In 1893, she commissioned the jeweller A.E. Skinner of Orchard Street in London to create a diamond tiara unlike anything the Cavendish family had ever seen. But Louise didn't want new diamonds. She wanted history. The 8th Duke of Devonshire removed diamonds from the famous Devonshire Parure, the bizarre collection of antique cameos and jewels we'll explore in a moment. He also dismantled other family heirlooms, including the 6th Duke's Garter star. In total, they gathered 1,041 diamonds from various Cavendish treasures. Skinner added another 840 new stones. The result was the Devonshire Diamond Palmette tiara. The design features 13 scrolled palmettes, fan-like shapes resembling leaves on a palm tree, alternating with lotus patterns. The upper section was made around 1893 and set throughout with cushion-shaped diamonds. The base has a row of lozenge motifs set between 2 lines of more cushion-shaped diamonds, dating from around 1897. It's mounted in silver and gold. This wasn't just a tiara, this was a monument. Louise wore it proudly. She made an important early appearance in the jewel in 1896, when she wore it for the wedding of Prince Carl of Denmark. Later, King Haakon VII of Norway, and Princess Maud of Wales. After Louise's death, she made a will ensuring that future Duchesses of Devonshire would continue to wear the diadem. The next Duchess was Evelyn Emily Mary Cavendish, who wore the Palmette tiara at the 1911 coronation of King George V, when she served as Mistress of the Robes to Queen Mary. And here's where the tiara's legend was born. When Deborah married Andrew Cavendish in 1941, she had no idea she would one day wear this magnificent piece. But in 1950, when Andrew's father died and they inherited the dukedom, the jewels became her responsibility. At the 1953 coronation of Queen Elizabeth II, both Deborah and her mother-in-law needed tiaras. The Dowager Duchess Mary wore the Palmette tiara because, as Mistress of the Robes to the Queen from 1953 to 1967, she had a more prominent role at the ceremony. Deborah later wrote, "My mother-in-law, Mary Devonshire, was Mistress of the Robes to the Queen from 1953 to 1967. Tall and beautiful, she looked magnificent when dressed for a grand occasion. The big tiara suited her perfectly, and anyone who saw her in close attendance on the young queen at the coronation in 1953 will remember the perfection of her bearing on that famous day. The Dowager Duchess wore the diamond Palmette tiara to state openings of Parliament throughout the 1950s and 60s. In the course of her duties, when Andrew died in 2004, Deborah passed the family jewellery to her daughter-in-law, Amanda. She wrote, "After Andrew's death, I handed the family jewellery on to my daughter-in-law, Amanda. It was not mine, just as it had not been Moucher's. It belongs to Chatsworth, to be worn by the wife of the Duke of Devonshire." The diamond Palmette tiara has now been worn by 4 duchesses: Louise, Evelyn, Mary and Deborah. In 2022, it went on display at Sotheby's in London as part of the Power and Image Royal and Aristocratic Tiaras exhibition. The tiara, made from 1,881 diamonds. Diamonds stolen from a garter star and a bizarre parure, remains one of the heaviest and most imposing tiaras in England. Queen Mary may have complained about her tiara, but Evelyn, Duchess of Devonshire, knew the truth. The Queen didn't know what a heavy tiara was. At the 1953 coronation, Deborah faced an unusual problem. Her mother-in-law, the Dowager Duchess Mary, needed to wear the magnificent Palmette tiara because she was mistress of the robes and would have more eyes on her. As Deborah put it, that meant Deborah, the actual Duchess of Devonshire, would be wearing the family's second best tiara. She was likely the only duchess at the coronation wearing her family's secondary piece. But Deborah didn't mind. She preferred the Devonshire Honeysuckle tiara. This piece was created around 1865 for Lady Louisa Cavendish, the only daughter of the 7th Duke of Devonshire. It was made for her wedding to Francis Egerton, an aristocratic naval officer who was also an aide-de-camp to Queen Victoria. The tiara is composed of 7 detachable honeysuckle elements over a diamond base, cast in silver and gold with numerous diamonds of various sizes and cuts. The design is formal, but not too heavy, with great upward spires and lots of breathing room. It's not a solid wall of diamonds. The genius of this piece lies in its versatility. The tiara can be worn as a necklace or a stomacher. The honeysuckle elements can be detached and worn as separate brooches. Diamond earrings and other ornaments can be attached to the tiara to create different looks. The tiara first appeared on a duchess half a century after it was made, when the future 9th Duchess of Devonshire wore it for a visit from King Edward VII and Queen Alexandra to Chatsworth around 1901. At the 1911 coronation of King George V, Evelyn, the 9th Duchess, wore the Palmette tiara on her head, but she wore the honeysuckle tiara as a stomacher, along with the Devonshire diamond riviere and matching earrings. It was a display of coordinated magnificence that showcased the full range of Cavendish jewels. The next Duchess, Mary, rarely wore the honeysuckle tiara. Notable exceptions included the French state visit to Britain in 1950 and the coronation gala performance of Gloriana at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden in 1953. But for Deborah, the honeysuckle tiara became her signature piece. At the 1953 coronation, she wore it with the diamond riviere attached to the neckline of a crimson velvet robe that had once belonged to Georgiana, 6th Duchess of Devonshire, from the late 18th century. The honeysuckle tiara suited Deborah's personality perfectly. It was elegant but not overwhelming, grand but approachable, formal but not intimidating. And then she did something extraordinary. In June 1961, Deborah attended an event at the Dorchester Hotel in London wearing the honeysuckle tiara. This wasn't a state banquet or a coronation gala. This was a society event. The photograph shows Deborah, Duchess of Devonshire, in full tiara. at what was essentially a night out. She wore the Devonshire jewels to live her life, not to lock them away, not to save them for the most important occasions. She wore them because they belonged to Chatsworth, and she was the custodian of Chatsworth. After Andrew's death in 2004, Deborah passed the honeysuckle tiara to her daughter-in-law, Amanda, the current Duchess of Devonshire, who wore it for her wedding to the 12th Duke in 1967. Their daughter, Lady Selina Cavendish, also wore the tiara for her wedding in 1995. The honeysuckle tiara has now graced 3 generations of brides: Amanda in 1967, Lady Selina in 1995, and likely future Cavendish brides to come. It remains at Chatsworth, ready to be worn, loved, and passed forward, just as Deborah intended. Now we come to the most bizarre, the most extravagant, and the most historically significant jewel in the Devonshire collection. The Devonshire Parure is unlike anything else in England. It consists of 7 monumental pieces of jewellery: a tiara, necklace, stomacher, bracelet, earrings, and other elements. They are, in Deborah's words, a bizarre combination of antique Greek and Roman and Renaissance cameos and intaglios carved from emeralds, rubies, sapphires, and semi-precious stones, cornelian, onyx, amethysts, and garnets, set in gold. Until you look closely at them, Deborah said, they might have been pulled out of the dressing-up box. The parure was commissioned by the 6th Duke of Devonshire, known as the Bachelor Duke, for his extravagant tastes and unmarried status. He commissioned the pieces for his niece, Countess Granville, to wear at the coronation of Tsar Alexander II in Moscow in 1856. The 6th Duke died in 1858, just 2 years after the parure was completed. The style is very much of the Renaissance revival jewellery made during the 1850s, heavy, ornate, and packed with ancient carved gemstones. The tiara features cameos and intaglios arranged in an imposing architectural structure. The necklace is equally dramatic. The entire parure is, as Deborah put it, very prickly to wear. For over a century, the Devonshire parure sat in the Chatsworth vaults. It was far too elaborate, too unusual, too historically specific to be worn at modern events. Duchesses admired it, photographed it, wrote about it, but they didn't wear it, until Deborah decided to put it on. In her book, Home to Roost, she wrote, "This tiara and its companion necklace, stomacher, and bracelet are very prickly to wear. I know because I put them all on for a Women's Institute performance when I was cast as the oldest Miss World in the world." There is a famous photograph of Deborah wearing the complete Devonshire parure, posing in front of her Lucian Freud portrait, Woman in a White Shirt, which the current Duke of Devonshire describes as probably the most beautiful thing at Chatsworth. The image is surreal. Deborah, in her later years, wearing jewels commissioned for a Russian coronation in 1856, standing in front of a brutally honest portrait painted by Lucian Freud in the late 1950s. It's a perfect encapsulation of Deborah's approach to Chatsworth. She honoured history, she preserved treasures, but she also lived with them, used them, and refused to treat them as untouchable museum pieces. The Devonshire parure has only been photographed once on a Duchess, Deborah, wearing it for that Women's Institute performance. In 2017, the parure was featured in a video as part of Sotheby's Treasures from Chatsworth series. The Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, along with their daughter-in-law Lady Burlington and Hannah Obi, exhibitions curator at Chatsworth, discussed the parure's extraordinary history. Lady Burlington wore the necklace from the Devonshire parure for a Vogue photo shoot promoting house style, 5 Centuries of Fashion at Chatsworth, an exhibition at Chatsworth. The Parure, those bizarre, prickly, magnificent jewels commissioned by an extravagant bachelor duke for a Russian coronation, remains at Chatsworth, ready to be worn by future generations willing to brave the discomfort. Because that's what Deborah taught the Cavendish family. Jewels aren't meant to sit in vaults. They're meant to be worn even if they're prickly. Especially if they're prickly. Deborah, Duchess of Devonshire, passed away on September 24, 2014, at age 94. She was the last surviving Mitford sister. She had outlived 5 of her 7 children. She had endured her husband's repeated affairs. He reportedly gave her a brooch every time he had one. She had navigated 24 years of death duty payments that threatened to destroy Chatsworth. But she saved it. She turned a crumbling palace into a commercial empire. She created the farmyard, the farm shop, and the exhibitions. She opened Chatsworth to the public and made it thrive. Deborah wasn't born into nobility. She was the youngest sister, the disappointment, the one Nancy claimed never grew up. But she understood something her more famous sisters never did. Preservation isn't about locking things away. It's about using them, loving them, and passing them forward. Still being worn, still being loved. Still representing the triumph of a housewife duchess who saved an empire, one tiara at a time. Which of these 3 pieces would you most want to see? The Palmette, too heavy for a queen? The Honeysuckle, worn to a night out? Or the Parure, prickly enough to make you regret it? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey through the Devonshire jewels and the remarkable Duchess who wore them, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.